What's up, everybody, and welcome back to our study on apologetics. So far, we've looked at a couple different worldviews and beliefs. We've looked at evolution. We looked at New Age teaching. Last week, we looked at atheism. Well, tonight, we're going to be looking at a worldview that's very different. We're going to be speaking about agnosticism. Now, agnosticism doesn't deny the existence of God, but it also doesn't affirm that God exists. See, as Christians, we can all understand the core of what others believe. We can know what Christianity teaches, and then we can learn how to skillfully share the message of Jesus with others. But agnosticism teaches that the existence of God cannot be proven. But it also teaches that the existence of God cannot be disproven. Agnosticism, establishes itself on the premise of a difference between belief and knowledge. And like I said, last time we spoke about atheism. And we learned that atheists do not believe in God. While theists, that's us, we believe that our lives should be established upon the truth of God's existence and God's Word. But agnosticism, they take a neutral stance in this matter, and they believe that it's a waste of time to think either way. And here's the thing, agnosticism, they encourage an unfavorable view of any religion. And the truth is, this agnostic worldview, it fails to give sufficient answers for many questions on how our world came about. Again, this is a lot of the things we've looked at over the last few weeks when talking about other worldviews. So when dealing with agnosticism, it's important to point out the fact of what we've talked about over the last few weeks, that the universe is an effect that would have required an equally powerful cause. See, there are only four possible explanations for how the universe was created. We've looked at them over the last few weeks. So when dealing with agnosticism, it's important to point out that our universe is an effect that would have required an equally powerful cause. So really, in their mind, or I guess dealing with them, there's only four possible explanations for how this universe, how we were all created. First would be the universe doesn't really exist. This is all an illusion. And this perspective is similar to the worldview of someone who holds to an extreme form of Buddhism. We're all just imagining what we see. Second option is that the universe is eternal. This we know is not possible, because if the universe is made up of the material that science has proven it's made up of, and if the universe was eternally old, then it would have burned up. All the energy that's needed to run it would have burned up by now. Again, the law of thermodynamics is what we looked at to prove that. The third option would be the universe came from nothing. It just appeared one day out of nowhere. However, we know this isn't the truth. See, our reason tells us that nothing can come from nothing. Something always creates something. The third option would be the universe came from nothing. It just appeared one day out of nowhere. And we know that this isn't true. See, we understand that nothing can come from nothing. Something always has to be created for something to be created, right? See, the first law of thermodynamics, again, says that energy cannot be created or destroyed. For there to be an effect, there must be a cause. And the fourth option, one that we've talked about every week, is a divine architect created the universe. See, when looking at these options from a scientific perspective, it's clear that the only viable option for explaining our universe is this one, that someone created it. There was a great creator. And when a person reaches this conclusion, he or she is also at a place of seeing that only a personal God could create humans in his image, like it says in Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. And that same God could impart to them his personality, his thought, and his morality. And looking back, many people think that agnostics don't believe in God. See, that's atheism, like we looked at last week. See, agnostics keep the question of God's existence open-ended. Atheism stands opposed to the idea of God, because within that worldview, there is no way to prove he exists. But again, agnosticism, however, focuses its attention on the idea that we can neither prove nor disprove the existence of a God. And guys, they just don't care. They just don't believe either way. So now we're going to look at a few things and hopefully give you some information on how to respond to this agnostic worldview. Number one would be considering the existence of God. See, how we view God is how we view the world around us and how we view everything that takes place in our lives. For instance, if there is no God, then we're free to live however we want to, with no concern about consequences or drawbacks from our way of living. But if there is a God, and if God has certain standards and ways for us to live by, then there are great implications, great consequences on obeying or disobeying him. And if there is a God, what's he like? What is his personality like? Is he loving? Does he demand discipline, or is he very lenient with us? I encountered a guy one time that had this kind of worldview. And he said, here's my agnostic teaching. It claims that God cannot be proven or disproven. He went on to say, it's just like a purple polka dot lion running around on the surface of Venus. Do you believe in that or not? See, it can't be proven or disproven. That made no sense to me. He said, well, the probability of a creature like that lion living is extremely low. And from my perspective, it really doesn't matter if it exists or not. I don't even care. And what I began to understand was that agnostics, they don't strive to seek whether or not there is a God, because in their belief, the question is not even critical. But the fact that an agnostic cannot be sure whether God exists makes it reasonable for that same person to consider our belief of Christianity. See, by this perspective, agnostics should not reject Christianity. Rather, they ought to explore Christianity. And here's an example of why. See, don't they say that it's highly unlikely that God exists? Well, isn't it highly unlikely that our world just appeared and came out of nothing? That now we have this system of humans and animals and the life that we have? It's very highly unlikely that it just came about. And within all this, there's a highly complex system that's needed for this life of animals and humans to be sustained. And this same system of brain functions and our immune systems, well, these are all indicators that there must be a divine architect, a creator, who fashioned all this together. And one other key attribute of humans that points, for me at least, points to a divine creator is the presence of certain emotions. But for agnostics, they don't believe in this. They teach that everything we are as humans is a result of an evolutionary process. They believe in evolution. However, if you take a look at a verse like Ecclesiastes 3:11, or you observe a typical funeral service, we can infer that God has planted eternity upon our hearts. Their hearts were made to be united for eternity. See, we were never intended to be separate. We were created with a longing to be with someone, to be part of something. And before Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden, they experienced perfect unity, perfect union with God and with each other. But after sin entered into the world, separation occurred, and ever since then, death and separation have created emotions such as grief, distress, sorrow, sadness, anger. So fundamentally speaking, emotions like grief and sorrow, they're proof that not only is there a God, but we wear the fingerprint of this divine as His creation. So again, agnostics really should consider the existence of a God. Number two, these guys should really make known what is unknown. Many things in this world are unexplainable in human terms. How does a flower really blossom? How do birds know when to head south for the winter? And how did they ever learn which direction is south and which direction is north? Fortunately, we have the wisdom of God's Word. And Scripture shows us, proves to us that creation never stops speaking. And if we allow it, creation will always cry out and prove and declare the majesty of God. Agnostic teaching says that if you cannot see something, hear something, or hold something in a tangible way, then it probably doesn't exist. But not being able to see or hold something specific does not disprove its existence, guys. Well, if this were the case, that just because we can't see, hold, or hear something tangibly means that it doesn't exist, then we can't believe in the law of gravity. We can't believe in entropy. We can't believe in reason and thought, because we can't see, hold, or hear these things. But in the book of Acts, we read about a time that the Apostle Paul dealt with people that had this thought. And he used the culture of Athens to address some profound spiritual truths for these people. Back in this time, Paul's time, this unknown God, I'm sure it caused a lot of confusion for some people. See, if they had no idea who God was, then there was no way they would know what that particular God did. So what Paul did is he focused the audience or the people's attention on something seen in order to expose what was unseen. He speaks about beauty and majesty and the grandeur of our world, which provide a great platform for people to gaze at as they contemplate the existence of a righteous God. So again, a consideration for agnostic is, how do you make known what is unknown? How does your worldview help with this? And number three, they need to consider discovering the meaning of life. We looked at this last week, but what is the meaning of life? Agnostics say that God might not exist, but if there is no God, does life have purpose? I mean, why are we even here? See, guys, when we look for the significance or point of our lives, We're basically asking, why are we here? Why do we exist? Where did I come from? What is the point of my life's experiences? How should I spend my time? What should my life be about? The fact is, if we have a worldview that keeps us at the center of existence, then we're going to have a limited perspective on what life is all about. We're going to think it's all about us. However, walking with Jesus, believing in God and living for Him, this gives us an opportunity to see life from an eternal perspective. And the key is to stay focused on that perspective. Life is not meaningless. God does exist, and He has a wonderful plan to redeem us and allow us to enjoy Him for the rest of eternity. So guys, the bottom line is this. It's very important to always remember that when talking with someone who adheres to this agnostic teaching, they're not saying or convinced that God doesn't exist. They're just saying they're not sure if He does or doesn't. See, this thought, this nuance can be an open door into conversation about faith. So to be really honest with you, these people are very open to accepting Christ in their lives. And it's not about you or I proving something or disproving something. Really, it's about us showing them what God has done in our lives. Showing them and getting them to look at some of these considerations about the unknown and the known and the existence of God. Why are we here? See, those things will help you when talking to an agnostic to maybe, just maybe, bring them over and help them believe what we believe. Guys, I hope this has helped you. This is a different kind of worldview tonight. So as you go into your groups, be open and honest with one another, and let's discuss and really look at this thought tonight. We'll see you next week.